The day my estranged parents walked into that conference room with a lawyer and a smile, they genuinely believed they were about to walk out millionaires. They had no idea that the man they'd ignored for 15 years had spent his final months building a legal wall they would never get through, and that the little girl they've thrown away had become the one holding the key. My name is Callie Brooks. I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of the day. Everything my biological family thought they were owed turned to dust in front of a room full of witnesses. But before I get to that room, I need to take you back to a summer night in Cincinnati when I was just 12 years old, sitting on the front steps of the only home I'd ever known, with 2 trash bags full of my belongings and nowhere to go. If you enjoy real-life family drama and emotional stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to Quiet Drama Stories for more powerful true-to-life narratives. I want to be honest with you about something. For a long time, I blamed myself. When you grow up in a house where one child is celebrated and another is barely tolerated, you don't think, my parents are failing me. You think, there must be something wrong with me. My mother, Renee Brooks, was the kind of woman who could make a room feel warm the moment she walked in, as long as you were the right person. She worked as a dental office manager, always put together, always smiling for the right audience. My father, Gary Brooks, drove a delivery truck and mostly let Renee run things. He wasn't cruel, he was just absent in every way that mattered. My older sister, Brittany, was 2 years older than me and looked exactly like my mom. Same strawberry blonde hair, same easy confidence. Everyone adored Brittany. My mom certainly did. I took after my dad's side. Brown hair, quieter, more interior. Mom wasn't mean about it. She just didn't see me the same way. By the time I was 10, the difference was obvious. Brittany's school events were calendar events. Mine were things my mom sometimes remembered and sometimes didn't. When Brittany turned 14, they threw her a party with a DJ. When I turned 12 3 months later, we had cake from a grocery store, a leftover from a canceled order, still in the case, with happy birthday and no name. That detail sounds small. It wasn't. The summer I turned 12, I found out Brittany had a college savings account that had been open for 8 years. 8 years of deposits. I asked my mom why I didn't have one. She looked at me like the question surprised her. Brittany's going to need it, she said. You're adaptable, Callie. You'll figure something out. That was the first time I understood what I was to them. Not a daughter, a guest who had overstayed her welcome and didn't know it yet. The following spring, I applied for a competitive STEM summer program at the University of Cincinnati. 6 weeks, fully funded, a $3,800 scholarship, covering everything. I applied in secret, because I'd learned not to celebrate things out loud in that house. I got in. Out of nearly 2,000 applicants, I was selected. I held that acceptance letter in the bathroom, with the door locked, and let myself cry the good kind of tears for exactly 4 minutes. Then Brittany's theater director mentioned an acting intensive in Nashville. 3 weeks, no scholarship, $1,200. That night at dinner, my mother announced the solution. Callie, you'll decline the science program. We can't send both of you, and Brittany's intensive will look better on college applications. She said it the way you'd say pass the salt. Something in me broke open. No. The table went silent. My father put down his fork. Excuse me? My mother's voice dropped to that register I missayer. Heard her use on people she considered beneath her. That scholarship is mine, I said, my voice shaking but steady. I earned it. You can't redirect it. My mother looked at me for a long moment. If you can't put this family first, she said slowly, then maybe you're not part of this family. I thought she was angry. I didn't realize she meant it as a plan. 3 days later, I came home from the library to find my belongings in 2 black garbage bags on the front porch. My mother stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. She didn't look angry. She looked resolved, like someone who had finished an unpleasant task. I called your Uncle Denny, she said. He's coming to pick you up. From now on, you're his problem. I stood there on those steps for 4 hours. 4 hours. My mother went back inside after 5 minutes. The porch light never came on. I looked up once at the second-floor window and saw Brittany watching from behind the curtain. When our eyes met, she stepped back into the dark. She didn't come down. Uncle Denny, Dennis Callahan, my father's older brother, lived in Columbus, 2 hours away. He drove through the night to get to me. When his truck pulled into the driveway, I was still sitting on top of those garbage bags with my knees pulled to my chest. He walked up without saying anything. He just looked at me, and then he wrapped me in a hug so tight I couldn't breathe. "You have a home now," he said quietly. "That's not changing." What I didn't know, what nobody told me that night, was that before Uncle Denny had left, my mother had signed a document. I wouldn't find out what it said for 15 years. Uncle Denny's house in the Clintonville neighborhood of Columbus wasn't large, but it felt enormous. He was a bachelor who'd spent 30 years building a commercial property management company from a single warehouse he'd purchased in his early 30s. By the time I arrived, he owned 11 properties across central Ohio. He didn't have to take me in. He chose to. Over the next 4 years, he showed up for every single thing. Science fairs, honor roll dinners, college prep nights. He read my essays, pushed me harder than I pushed myself, and told me constantly that the people who threw me away had made the biggest mistake of their lives. I graduated from high school with a 4.0. I got into Ohio State on a partial scholarship and graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting. I passed the CPA exam on my first attempt. By 24, I was working as a financial analyst. By 26, I was running the books for Callahan Commercial Properties. Uncle Denny sent me an email on my 26th birthday. The subject line read, "To my daughter." The message was short. "You didn't need saving, Callie. You just needed space to become who you already were. Happy birthday, Dad." I saved that email in a folder I titled Evidence. In 15 years, my biological family contacted me exactly 3 times. The first time was 2015, when my mother called Uncle Denny, not me, asking for $4,000 because my father had lost his job. Denny declined. He told me they hadn't asked a single question about how I was doing. The second was 2019, when Brittany mailed me a wedding invitation with no note, no message, just my name on an envelope. I didn't go. The third was 2022. My mother sent me an email with the subject line, "Checking in," after she apparently saw an article about Callahan Commercial Properties in a local business journal. She hoped I was well. She thought we should catch up sometime. I deleted it. I wasn't bitter. I had simply built a life that didn't include them, and I saw no reason to rebuild the door they had closed. In the fall of 2023, Uncle Denny was diagnosed with congestive heart failure, advanced stage. The doctors gave him 12 to 18 months. He lasted 9. During those final months, he updated his will. He met with his estate attorney, a woman named Patricia Holt, multiple times. When I asked him about it, he smiled in that way he had, like he was in on a joke nobody else had heard yet. "Everything's handled," he said. "You focus on the business. I'll handle the rest." I didn't press him. I trusted him completely. Dennis Callahan passed away on January 19, 2025. He went quietly, in his sleep, at Ohio State Wexner Medical Center. I was holding his hand. 12 days later, I was in my office when a call came from an unfamiliar Cincinnati area code. I almost didn't answer. "Callie," my mother's voice. 15 years compressed into one word. "Renee," I said. Not Mom, just her name. A pause. I could almost hear her recalibrating. She offered condolences. She mentioned that she'd heard about Denny. She said she'd been thinking she should reach out. Then she said what she'd actually called to say. "I understand there's a will reading coming up. Family has a right to attend these things. How did you find out about the will reading?" She had hired an attorney named Lawrence Fenn. He had made calls. I hung up. Then I called Patricia Holt. The next morning, Patricia confirmed everything. Renee had retained Lawrence Fenn to file a challenge alleging undue influence, that I had manipulated a terminally ill man against his own family. They were also demanding to attend the will reading as blood relatives of the deceased. I sat in my office and looked at the framed photo of Uncle Denny on my desk. He was smiling. He looked like a man who had planned for exactly this. Patricia Holt's office occupied a corner suite in a downtown Columbus tower. 2 days before the will reading, she called me in. She slid a legal challenge filing across her desk. Lawrence Fenn had alleged that Gary Brooks, my father, was entitled to a portion of the estate on the grounds of familial connection to the deceased, who was Gary's brother. Their theory, Patricia said, is that Dennis died without a spouse or children, so the estate should pass partially to his surviving sibling. Gary barely spoke to Denny for a decade. I know, but here's what will end this entirely. She reached into a file drawer and produced a yellowed folder. Inside was a document that had been sitting in the King County archives for 15 years. The header read, "Voluntary Relinquishment of Parental Rights and Transfer of Legal Guardianship." Dated July 22, 2010. Signed by Gary Allen Brooks and Renee Marie Brooks. My hands started shaking. "They didn't just put you out," Patricia said quietly. "They signed you away. Legally, Gary Brooks has not been your parent since you were 12 years old." I stared at the document. My mother had gone back inside that night, while I sat in the dark on the porch, and she had signed papers. What does this mean for their claim? It means Gary has no legal standing to claim inheritance through family connection. He severed that connection himself, in writing, with a notary stamp. Patricia offered me two choices: settle quietly, offer them something and make them go away, or proceed with the will reading, present the full history, and let the truth do what it was built to do. "Dennis left specific instructions," Patricia said. "He anticipated this. He wanted it on the record." I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the house Uncle Denny had left me, looking at 15 years of photographs, graduations, business milestones, ordinary Tuesday dinners, and I thought about what he had said to me in that email. You just needed space to become who you already were. I called Patricia at 7 the next morning. "No settlement," I said. "We proceed." The will reading was scheduled for February 7, 2025, at 2:00 p.m. Patricia's conference room was on the 18th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Scioto River. It was a cold, clear day. You could see for miles. I arrived early. I wore a charcoal gray suit and kept my hair down. Uncle Denny once told me the most powerful people in a room don't announce themselves. The room filled with representatives from 3 charities Denny had supported for decades, 5 senior employees from Callahan Commercial Properties, who'd known me since my intern days, and a financial auditor named Walter Chase who had managed the company's accounts for 12 years. At 2:07, the elevator opened. My mother stepped out first. She had dressed for a different occasion: black blazer, pearl earrings, the practiced expression of dignified grief. Behind her came my father, heavier than I remembered, in a suit that didn't quite fit, and behind him, Brittany, in a soft blue wrap dress, looking tired and slightly lost. Their attorney, Lawrence Fenn, brought up the rear. Silver-haired, expensive briefcase, the polished confidence of a man who assumed he'd already won. My mother's eyes found me immediately. "Callie," she said, her voice warm with performance. "I'm so glad you're here. I was hoping we could speak privately before." "The proceedings start in 3 minutes," I said. "Whatever you need to say can wait." Patricia directed them to chairs along the wall. Not at the table. My mother's jaw tightened visibly. She didn't go quietly. She paused near the charity representatives to introduce herself. Dennis's sister-in-law. We were quite close before the estrangement. Glancing meaningfully in my direction, Brittany added, from the wall, that she didn't understand why she was sitting over there, and I was at the table. Lawrence Fenn was already writing notes, looking for any reaction he could use. I gave him nothing. Then my mother, still standing, let her voice carry across the room. "A child who's rejected by her family usually has a reason. I just wish Dennis had been able to see through her the way we did." The room shifted uncomfortably. I looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time in 15 years, she hadn't changed at all. Same certainty, same need to own the narrative, same absolute conviction that she was the victim in every story. Patricia cleared her throat. "It's 2:00. We'll begin." Patricia broke the seal on the estate envelope with practiced calm. She read through the opening articles. Identity, sound mind, prior wills revoked. She noted that a full psychiatric evaluation had been conducted 8 days before the will was signed, confirming Dennis was under no undue influence at the time of execution. I watched Lawrence Fenn exchange a glance with my mother. They had been counting on challenging Denny's mental state. This documentation closed that door. Then Patricia reached the asset inventory: 11 commercial properties, investment accounts, cash reserves, combined value, just over $19 million. I heard Brittany whisper to my mother. My mother nodded, eyes already calculating. "We will now proceed to Article 5. Patricia said, "which addresses specific bequests and exclusions." She turned the page. Article 5. Regarding Gary Allen Brooks, brother of the deceased. My mother actually smiled. She wouldn't be smiling for long. "I make no provision in this will for my brother Gary Allen Brooks, for the following reasons, which I direct to be read aloud and entered into the public record." My mother's smile flickered. Patricia read on in Dennis's own words. "First, In the spring of 2003, Gary borrowed $65,000 from me, with a written agreement to repay the full amount within 5 years. 22 years have passed. Not $1 has been returned. I have retained the original promissory note. My father's face went gray. Second, on July 22, 2010, Gary and his wife Renee voluntarily executed a legal document, relinquishing all parental rights to their daughter, Callie Marie Brooks, transferring full legal guardianship to me. This document was properly witnessed and notarized. My mother was on her feet before Patricia finished the sentence. What does that have to do with anything? Patricia paused, looked at her over her reading glasses, and continued without acknowledging the outburst. The significance of this document is as follows. By legally terminating their parental relationship with Callie, Gary and Renee severed any claim they might make through familial connection to my estate. Callie is my legal heir. Gary is not her legal father. He has no standing to challenge this will on grounds of family bond. Patricia reached into her folder and placed the relinquishment document on the table. My mother stared at it like she'd never seen it before, but she had. She had signed it. This is insane, my father said, his voice hoarse. I'm his brother. His blood brother. Lawrence Fenn grabbed his arm and pulled him down, but even the attorney's face had gone pale. Mrs. Brooks, Patricia said calmly, I must ask you to take your seat. Disrupting these proceedings is a matter the court takes seriously. My mother didn't sit. She pointed at me. She did this. She poisoned him against his own family. She manipulated a sick man, Sandra. My voice came out quiet, steady, the way Denny had taught me to speak in hard moments. Never raise your voice. Make them strain to hear you. Renee, I said. Not Sandra, but close enough. You made a choice 15 years ago. You put my things in trash bags and left me on a porch in the dark. Then you went inside and signed a document giving me away. I was 12 years old. The room went absolutely still. That was your decision, I continued. Not mine. Not Denny's. Yours. Everything happening in this room today is just the consequence of what you chose to do. My mother's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She sank back into her chair. Patricia adjusted her glasses. There is one more article I haven't yet read. Article 7. The room held its breath. Patricia turned to page 14 of the will. Article 7. Designation of sole beneficiary and legal heir. She paused for exactly one beat. I hereby bequeath the entirety of my estate, all real property, investment accounts, liquid assets, and personal effects, to my legally adopted daughter, Callie Marie Brooks. Adopted. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. My mother's face went white. Not pale. White. Adopted? My father's voice was barely a sound. Patricia looked up. Dennis Callahan formally adopted Callie Marie Brooks on March 4, 2014, when she was 17 years old. As Gary and Renee Brooks had already voluntarily and legally relinquished their parental rights in 2010, no additional consent was required. The adoption is on file with Franklin County Family Court. Brittany stared at me from across the room. So we're not related anymore? Not legally, I said. Not since your parents signed the document. Patricia returned to the will. Callie is not merely a beneficiary. She is my daughter in every sense that matters. Legally, practically, and in the ways that cannot be written into law, but live in 15 years of shared mornings, and hard work, and chosen love. There is no one more deserving of this inheritance. There is no one I love more. My vision blurred. I hadn't known the language of this clause. Denny had kept it. He had saved it for this room, for this moment. My mother began shaking her head slowly. A woman waking from a dream she couldn't believe she was having. Victor, Lawrence, tell them we're contesting this. Undue influence. He was sick. She isolated. Lawrence Fenn didn't answer immediately. He was staring at his legal pad. His pen had stopped moving. Patricia turned her laptop to face the room. Mr. Fenn, perhaps you'd like to address this. On screen was an email chain. Patricia read the subject line aloud. Email dated September 14, 2021. From Dennis Callahan to Lawrence Fenn. Subject, terminating services. She read a portion of the message in her steady, neutral voice. Lawrence, I am ending our professional relationship. Your suggestion that I include Gary in my estate plan, given his years of financial exploitation and his abandonment of my daughter, is not advice I can accept. I will be engaging new counsel. She looked up. Mr. Fenn previously represented Dennis Callahan. He was terminated because he advocated for Gary Brooks's interests over his clients' expressed wishes. He then accepted this challenge case without disclosing that prior relationship to his current clients. Lawrence Fenn's face had gone the color of old concrete. My mother turned to stare at him. You told me we would win. He had nothing. He stood up, gathered his briefcase, walked toward the door, with the stiff movements of a man watching his career implode in real time. Lawrence. My mother's voice cracked. Lawrence, where are you going? The conference room door closed behind him with a soft, final click. My mother stood in the middle of the room, abandoned by her own attorney in front of everyone she had hoped to impress. The room was silent. Then she turned to me. The mask was completely gone. Underneath it was something I had never seen on her face before. Desperation. And something that might have been the very beginning of real regret. Callie. Sweetheart. We're still blood. We can still... You gave up the right to call me sweetheart, I said. On July 22nd, 2010. You signed the document yourself. I stood. I don't hate you, Renee. Honestly, I feel sorry for you. But you have no claim on me. Not legally, not emotionally, not in any way that matters. You made sure of that. I looked at Patricia. Can we continue with the remaining articles? Patricia nodded. My mother sat down. She didn't speak again for the rest of the reading. There was one more item. Patricia withdrew a sealed envelope, smaller than the others, with my name written on the front in Denny's handwriting. Mr. Callahan left a personal letter for Callie, with instructions to offer to read a portion aloud during these proceedings if she consents. I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. Patricia unfolded a single handwritten page and began to read. Callie, if this letter is being read aloud, it means things went exactly the way I expected. Your biological family showed up looking for money they never earned from a man they never cared about. I'm sorry you had to go through this. But I also know you. A soft, broken sound escaped my mother's throat. Patricia continued. You came to me as a wounded child, discarded by people who should have protected you. But you didn't let that be the end of your story. You transformed every painful thing they did into something extraordinary. I have never been more proud of anyone in my entire life. I didn't save you, Callie. You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to do it. Don't let them make you feel guilty for surviving. You owe them nothing. You owe yourself everything. I love you. Forever your father, Denny. Tears were running down my face. I didn't try to stop them. The will reading concluded at 3:52 p.m. My parents left without another word. My father shuffled out ahead of my mother, staring at the floor. He'd spent his whole life letting Renee lead. She had led them both off a cliff. Brittany followed, but she paused at the door and looked back at me, just for a second. Something in her eyes that I couldn't name but recognized. Shame that had been living inside her for a long time. 3 weeks later, Tricia filed a formal complaint with the Ohio State Bar Association against Lawrence Fenn. Conflict of interest, failure to disclose a prior client relationship, misrepresentation to current clients about the strength of their case. 2 months after that, Fenn was suspended from practicing law for 6 months and fined substantially. Within the year, several of his major clients had quietly moved their business elsewhere. Didn't do anything to make that happen. Just happened to be there when the consequences caught up with him. My mother sent me an email 6 weeks after the reading. The subject line was "Please read." She said she understood she had made mistakes. She said she wasn't asking for money. She said blood doesn't disappear because of legal papers. I took 2 days to write my response. It was 4 sentences. Renee, I've read your message. I forgave you a long time ago, for my own sake, not yours. But I don't want a relationship with you. Please don't contact me again. She didn't reply. She didn't contact me again. About 2 months after the reading, a handwritten letter arrived at my Columbus address. The return name on the envelope read B. Warren. Brittany's married name. I opened it reluctantly. Callie, I'm not writing this to ask for anything. Not forgiveness. Not a relationship. Just to say something I should have said the night they kicked you out. I was watching from my bedroom window. I saw you sitting on those steps with the garbage bags. I watched you for 4 hours, alone in the dark, and I never came down. I was 15. I could have come down. I could have brought you water, or just sat next to you so you weren't alone. Instead, I stood at that window like a coward and watched. That's never left me. Every time Mom talked about you, always her version, always making herself the victim, I kept thinking about that window. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just couldn't let another year go by without telling you the truth. You deserved better from your older sister, Brittany. I read it 4 times. It was the first honest thing anyone in my biological family had ever said to me. I didn't write back right away. I talked to my therapist about it first. I sat with the question of what I actually wanted. Not what felt generous. Not what would make me look like the bigger person, but what I genuinely wanted. The answer surprised me. I didn't want to shut the door entirely. Her letter had been something real. No deflection, no money request, just accountability. So I wrote back with conditions. No contact through our parents. No discussions about the estate or Denny's memory. My right to end any conversation without explanation. If those conditions were acceptable, I was open to a monthly video call. 15 minutes. Low pressure. We'd see how it went. Her reply came in 3 days. 1 word. Accepted. February 7th, 2026. Exactly 1 year after the will reading. I stood outside the first commercial building Dennis Callahan ever purchased. A modest, 3-story property in Columbus's Short North neighborhood, bought in 1989, with a down payment he'd saved for 7 years. A bronze plaque had been mounted beside the entrance that morning. The Dennis R. Callahan Building, in memory of a man who chose love over blood. 1951 to 2025. I touched the letters of his name. Behind me, the Callahan Commercial Properties portfolio had grown by 14% in the past year, bringing the total value to just over $21 million. Occupancy rates held above 95%. The Callahan STEM Scholarship had awarded its first 6 grants. 6 kids from difficult family situations, fully funded for summer programs in science and mathematics. The first recipient was a 13-year-old girl from Dayton who had been staying with a grandmother after aging out of a foster placement. I had written her a letter with her award. I told her that getting kicked while you're down doesn't mean you stay down. I told her she had earned this, and that she should never let anyone redirect what she'd earned. I meant every word. My best friend and colleague, Maya Osei, came and stood beside me. How are you feeling? I thought about the question. Peaceful, I said. That's better than happy. Brittany and I still talked once a month. The calls had grown from 15 minutes to nearly 30. We'd graduated to real things. Her kids, my work, the strange overlapping childhood we'd had in the same house, remembering it from opposite sides. We weren't sisters in any traditional sense, but we were something. We were still figuring out what. I didn't know what my parents' lives looked like now. I found, standing at that plaque on that cold February morning, that I genuinely didn't need to know. Uncle Denny used to say that the most dangerous myth families tell themselves is that blood automatically equals love. It doesn't. Love is a practice. It's the porch light you turn on. It's the drive through the dark. It's the door you choose to open when someone else has nowhere to go. My biological parents made a choice the summer I was 12. They didn't just give me up, they signed it, notarized it, and handed it to a stranger to file. And then, 15 years later, they showed up expecting to profit from the man who had picked me up off the floor. What they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, because it required a kind of emotional imagination they'd never developed, was that every single thing they'd done in 2010 had followed them into that conference room. You don't get to throw someone away and then claim them back when it becomes convenient. You don't get to sign away a child and then call yourself family when there's money on the table. The truth has a way of waiting, and when it finally arrives, it arrives with paperwork, a notary stamp, and a very calm attorney reading clause by clause. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth on record. Uncle Denny gave me exactly that. If you've ever had to stand up to someone who hurt you, someone who still believed they were the victim, I want you to know something. You are not obligated to rewrite the story for their comfort. Your healing does not require their participation. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself. Reconciliation is a choice, not an obligation. And family, real family, is the person who drives 2 hours through the night to pick you up off the porch. Choose those people. Be that person. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more real stories about family, boundaries, and starting over, subscribe to Quiet Drama Stories. There are more stories like this one. Stories about people who lost everything and chose to rebuild on their own terms. Take care of yourself. You're worth it.